It's good to see everyone. Done some work in some subs up to now. This is the first full meeting of a governmental affairs. We've got several bills on the calendar today, and hopefully the subs, I'm optimistic, have done a great job at vetting those particular bills. But we're going to start off today, members of the committee, with the distinguished gentleman on House Bill 561, Chairman Wilkinson. Welcome.
Yeah, if you want.
Wherever Craig wants you. Again, from members of the committee, House Bill 561.
Thank you. How now? Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is House Bill 561, which I introduced last year, but I deliberately held it for this year to get more, frankly, publicity and to raise awareness of the need to adopt animals, and in this case dogs, but it's what we've seen so far after we introduced it last year and had news conferences, is it resulting in adoptions of dogs and cats, which is fantastic. I would invite your attention to Section 1, because that gives the rationale. And you know that a majority of animals taken into shelters are euthanized. There are thousands of animals available right now for adoption, and then it's also an opportunity to educate the pet owners about spay and neuter, and we want to promote the responsible stewardship of dogs and cats, and we want to promote the rescue of and adoption of animals, and in this case, I want you all to think for a minute. When General Oglethorpe founded the colony of Georgia, its purpose was to give people a second chance, and it was to provide for the worthy poor and religious freedom. For example, the Salzburgers coming from Austria. And I thought, what more appropriate way to bring out the purpose of our state than an adoptable dog, giving animals a second chance. Now, let me tell you about the practical side of it. This cost counties and cities a good bit of money. It's estimated that when they have a dog, cat dumped off or found stray, you're talking $15 to $35 per animal per day. Think about that, and the thousands of dollars that's costing our citizens. The estimates are all over the place on euthanizing an animal, but 50 to 100 at least, and then the cost of disposal. Well, we are trying to promote adoption, and it's also trying to save money for our citizens. And frankly, animals are so special. They've been so special in my life, and it actually helps, I think, families when they do have animals and expand their family with animals. So, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your help on this. And I think one other important thing about this, there's no cost. It's just a change in code. It's in Code 50 under Chapter 3, Article 3. So that's already covered each year. So we're not talking about any expenditures. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Fleming.
Go Dogs.
Especially today on National Signing Day.
By the way, your committee, subcommittee chair, who I was his mentor his first year, so I'm to blame for a lot. But from what I understand, the life of a yellow jacket's 45 days, so they're not going to be adopted.
Representative Price.
Is there an official Georgia state cat?
Not that I've seen.
There's your first bill.
I knew I came down here for a reason. I'm just wondering if it could be expanded to include cats.
Well, I want to keep this right now with just because the adoptable dog. When we first came out with this and did the teas and so forth, and I cannot tell you the number of people who contacted me. They all assumed, of course, it would be the bulldog, and there, of course, as you know, I had a corgi, and we had everybody wanting to have their dog, their particular breed, and so forth. But I thought the adoptable dog made it very clear that this is what Georgia, the colony, was founded to give people a second chance. We're giving them a second chance.
Thank you. Number 25. Who we got down there? 25. Representative Taylor.
Appropriate time. I'd like to make a motion, sir.
Yeah, now is the appropriate time.
Sir, I move to pass.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, bark loudly. Ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, for Representative Price, the governor has an adoptable grand dog. He hadn't mentioned anything to me about an adoptable cat, but if he does, I'll come.
All right, the next contestant is Representative Caldwell. 738. If you'll give the members a chance to find it. House Bill 738.
You ready, Mr. Chairman? All right. Of course, we had a subcommittee hearing on this yesterday, and I think now that you... Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we had a subcommittee hearing on this yesterday, the original bill 738, and at the time that we started, there was a substitute that was actually offered that we talked about the substitute instead of basically the original bill. But what this bill does, as I explained yesterday, virtually every county has a county law library. It's funded by the fees that are collected from the filings of the various courts, superior, state, probate courts, and most now have the magistrates courts collecting, and if not, I think most of them all now have bills to do that. Anyway, what this basically does, the code provision says once they have stocked the law library with books, and now most of them use the electronic and have computers so they can look up Lexis and this type of thing, it then provides what to do with excess funds. And the first thing that they do, and what they should do, is provide legal services to indigent people who do not have legal representation, most particularly in civil cases. And then what this does, it gives a provision, and to be quite honest with you, the counties have been doing this by an interpretation that we even talked about. Once they have done that, they've been using the excess funds to fund money for the grand jury room, or put a computer or a sound system in the courthouse. And they sort of been doing it by the do-it rule, and what this does, it puts it in the code so that they can now use excess funds to only use for the courthouse or court services, the public defender, the DA's office, the solicitor's office, and it adds also the act provides for who serves on the board of trustees, and the district attorney was not on it. The solicitor was, and all the other people. Now this also puts the DA on that board. That's what this bill does. And I'll answer any questions that I may have.
Thank you so much. Number 26, who do we have down there? Representative Mary Margaret Oliver.
All right, Mary Margaret, be kind.
Well, I'm trying to remember, and I can't fully remember what we did in DeKalb County about these excess funds. I thought when we changed the fee structure several years ago, we set one fee for every civil filing throughout the state, and the excess local fees went where?
I really don't know, Mary Margaret. This does not provide for any additional fees.
I know, but we have been collecting fees that I thought we had in part done away with, and that's what I can't remember. And is this different? The purpose of doing one set civil filing was that we didn't have different fees in every county.
Representative Oliver, let me see. We may have somebody that might be able to help address that.
Thank you. This lady always knows.
Come up, Deb.
Hello, Deborah Nesbitt, ACCG. The law library fee was not impacted by that because it's a local fee. When we did that big fee bill, it was not included in there.
So how many, all circuits still have a library fee? And is it the same for all circuits?
It's different. I think it's...
It can't exceed
goes-
$5.
Right.
It's set by the Chief Superior Court Judge, Mayor Morgan, but it cannot exceed $5. And as far as I know, nearly everybody collects $5.
Right. It's up to. It's got the up to language.
And then the question is, they've been doing it by the do it rule, which is a good characteristic, but now you're deciding, for instance, here, what they can't give it to. I mean, they may have been doing it by the do it rule and by giving it to the animal shelter or by giving it.
Only a charitable law. They were not dispersing it out except to people who needed legal representation, at least in the areas that I worked in. Or, of course, certainly the law library first, and then for legal representation, and then only for court services, things in the courthouse.
Line 39 to 42
Okay.
says, tell me if I'm right. Does it say we cannot give it to the Family Law Center in DeKalb County if you can only give it to the district attorney, the solicitor, judicial?
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. That the board decides who they will give the money to.
And this statute doesn't limit who they can give it to?
It limits what it can be used for.
Right.
But I would imagine the Family Law Center would be something that they could use it for.
Tell me what line on between 39 and 42 says that they can use it for the family law or for the public defender or for the whatever.
This doesn't, but the board still gets to choose where they use the money. This only gave them really the authority to do things they've been doing already, and I don't think it limits them what they cannot do, Mark. Mayor Mark, you may have a different opinion. That's just my opinion. And like I say, once this was introduced, then the County Commissioners Association looked at it, and actually this substitute that you have was basically drawn by them and given to me by Deborah, and that's the one that we worked off of.
If you look at line 37, Representative Oliver, of the bill, it says granted to charitable tax exempt organizations which provide civil legal representation. I believe that your Family Law Center would probably follow.
It's a county office. It's not a tax exempt
But
organization.
they could give it to that. I mean, from my experience, they can give it to any of the court services programs.
I very well could be wrong, and I'll look at this again. But what I don't want is for our policy to be that we can only give it to the solicitor, the DA.
Let me see if I can help you, Representative Aller. Do you object if you're telling me that the intent is to be able to give to her or another county? Then it seems like to me it'd be easy enough just to amend this to make sure that that's included and not by having it left out. Someone have the false.
I don't have a problem with it, Mr. Chairman.
Wouldn't that do that, Representative Oliver? Would that get you where you need to go?
Yes, sir.
Would you be kind enough to work with Legislative Council on getting that at the appropriate time, which is
Yes.
now?
I was thinking that's where I was going now. Judge Caldwell, tell me if this suits you. In line 2, used to purchase for after furnishings. This I'm only thinking aloud here.
Let's start again. Line where?
Line 39.
Okay. Yeah.
Paragraph 2, line 39.
I'm reading that.
Or furnishings for any office related to county judicial facilities or services.
That's fine.
Is that the best way to do it? There might be a better way.
When you say any, you can give it to any of them. As far as I'm concerned.
For any offices relating to judicial facilities or offices.
All right. I'm just going to make sure that we've got another question, I think, from Representative Fleming, unless that answered it.
I'm sure he can improve upon that language.
Well, yeah, I wanted to give the opportunity for our Legislative Counsel and Jeff Lanier to make sure that we're doing exactly what you want to do on that. Does that meet what she wants to do?
I think it probably does, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Based on what I'm seeing, what's the situation.
I'm fine with that, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any other questions from members of the committee? All right. What's the favor? What does the committee want to do?
I move the bill do pass first.
We got a motion to pass. Got a second. Got a motion and got a second. Now we got an amendment from Representative Oliver.
On line 39, paragraph 2, following the word for any office any office relating to county judicial facilities or services.
All right. We got a second on the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Or questions? All right, we got a motion. How do we feel about the amendment? Got a motion to pass as amended. Substitute as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Thank you. House Bill 738 by substitute as amended passes.
Mr. Chairman, that
Yes.
concludes my service. May I be excused?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next for the committee, House Bill 781. House Bill 781. Representative Raffensperger, Persier.
Thank you, Chairman Reinders. Is the mic on? Okay. For providing the opportunity to present HB 781 for the committee's consideration. Chairman and fellow House colleagues, HB 781 was brought forward for your review and consideration to strengthen the membership requirements for government boards, commissions, and authorities. This bill would require that a person be a legal resident of Georgia and an American citizen in order to be eligible to serve on any state, county, or municipal board, commission, or authority. Recent events in California involving two illegal aliens who are appointed to a city board became the impetus for me to research current state law. I was shocked to find that there isn't anything in place to ensure that American citizens who are legal Georgia residents would be the only eligible persons to serve on government boards, commissions, and authorities. Boards, commissions, and authorities do differ from an elected position and also from employee status. Obviously, to be employed either in the government or private sector for any job in Georgia only requires legal immigration status. That said, employee status is of a different nature than membership in a board, commission, or authority. Boards, commissions, and authorities can have broad powers to determine policies on tax reductions, bond obligations, zoning, and in many cases serving quasi-judicial functions. If American citizenship is required to serve on a jury to ensure our constitutional right of being tried before our peers, then decisions affecting American citizens' level of taxation, peaceful enjoyment of life, or financial well-being should also be in the hands of fellow American citizens. There are some people who might question the American citizen requirement of this bill. Citizenship has certain rights reserved to it, just as resident alien status has more rights to the holder than an H-1B visa or a temporary worker holder. Juries sit in a judicial function require American citizenship to be on a jury. Only citizens can vote. In Shockley versus Fayette County, the court stated, "We have recognized that the powers delegated to a Board of Zoning and Appeals are quasi-judicial and quasi-legislative. It stands to reason for the sake of government's consistency that if a jury which is judicial requires American citizenship, then why wouldn't a quasi-judicial board, commission, and authority require American citizenship? Furthermore, if you bring your property before a quasi-judicial proceeding, why would you not be entitled to be heard by a jury of your peers?" The Georgia Supreme Court ruling also said that these boards are quasi-legislative. All legislative positions are typically elected positions and require American citizenship, and therefore I believe that this bill is consistent and appropriate. Another example is the Georgia World Congress Center, which is given wide and strong power in its charter to make recommendations to indebt the taxpayer through its request. In the resolution of its authority, Section 7 reads, "Whereas further, pursuant to Article 7, Section 4 of the Constitution of the State of Georgia, the state may finance certain capital needs directly through the issuance of general obligation debt. Therefore, it is my belief that it is indeed appropriate and the proper course of oversight to require American citizenship. I've heard some people ask the question, why is there a one-year Georgia residency requirement for local boards, commissions, and authorities, and a 4-year Georgia residency for state boards, commissions, and authorities? This was placed in the bill for the purpose of consistency to mirror statutes where state-level positions require longer residency. Generally, local elected positions require people for those offices to have residence for 1 year. Therefore, I set 1 year per line 22 and 41 in the bill you have before you. General Assembly members have to be state residents for 2 years and in their districts for 1 year. The governor and lieutenant governor have to reside in the state for 6 years. The 4-year duration is a policy issue, and careful deliberation on this committee's part is appropriate. Due to the generally more important nature or farther-reaching effects of a state board, commission, or authority when compared to a local board, I place 4 years into this proposed bill per line 52. Of course, as you're all aware, all elected officials in Georgia must be American citizens and legal Georgia residents. Duration of residency is the only variable. A question was raised by several people concerning the issue about the situation where a local business owner may own a business in one local jurisdiction but live outside of that local jurisdiction. Georgia prides itself on our #1 business-friendly climate, so accordingly, wording is provided for our cities like Columbus, Augusta, and Savannah, located on the state line, courtesy of Representative Fleming during the subcommittee meeting. Finally, this bill exempts active military personnel and family relatives. We have, as a body, always supported our brave and patriotic military personnel and families, and due to their transient nature of their service, they may not be residents of Georgia per these residency requirements, yet they or their families would love to serve on a board, commission, or authority while stationed here in Georgia. Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity to present this bill today.
And thank you for the opportunity to allow me to co-sponsor it and other members of the committee. Any questions from members of the committee? Representative Kidd.
Thank you. Has been any thought to limit the terms that someone serves on these boards to like 8 years? I've had several people contact me about other state boards and so forth, that authorities, and there's no term limits, so to speak, and they've been on 12, 15, 16, some 22 years. A lot of people think that 8 years is plenty of time for someone to be appointed twice or 3 times and to serve.
Representative Kidd, thank you for your question. That really goes beyond the scope of what I was trying to accomplish in this.
I understand
and I
that.
think that would probably be for someone's consideration in future legislative action.
Thank you. Representative Oliver.
Was testimony allowed at the subcommittee meeting? Okay.
Yes, Representative Oliver. We had 3 people that spoke in favor of it, and I think 3 people that had concerns about it on the other side.
Do you know how many people will be taken off boards, governmental units in Georgia if this bill passes?
No, I don't.
Have you, a governmental unit, which is on line 18, I'm trying to figure out what exactly a governmental unit is. It as a separate legal entity, is that what you anticipate that to be?
I felt it would be part of some taxing organization set aside as opposed to a private sector enterprise.
It's your intention that the ambassador of England could come into this country would not be allowed to serve on an advisory board of some kind for the state of Georgia. Is that your intention?
I believe he's sworn allegiance to his native land, and he would be best served to focus on working as country's best interest. So I don't know if that would really be something I could envision.
Well, but it is your intent that any member of the consular corps coming to here for some international business purpose, the Siemens German company, for instance, would not be allowed to serve on any kind of economic development board. Is that your intent?
If the board has taxing authority, I think that should be reserved for American citizens.
So governmental unit is only defined as a taxing authority entity?
Or policy forming, did not we?
Policy forming also, which leads into taxation issues typically.
I'm just trying to figure out who you don't want to serve on an economic development board that doesn't have taxing authority but has some policy considerations. It is your intent you don't want the ambassador of England to serve on that board?
No.
I'm going to help you. I guess that's going to be for each and every member of this committee to decide. Is it your intent to make sure that Americans and citizens of the state of Georgia is a priority of this country when making policy and taxation decisions for this great state?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that was my intent.
Thank you. Representative Brockway.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Raffensperger, thanks for taking this question. I'm sorry we didn't get to it yesterday in subcommittee. We had another committee breathing down our necks, so we kind of had to wrap up. But I want to know if you would envision that, say, the city government wanted to form a committee of citizens to work on improving relations with, say, the police force and some immigrant populations. What I'm thinking of is in Swanee, which is in my district, we have a lot of mostly Asians moving in, and the police have expressed concerns about trying to work with that population. Would you think that what you have outlined here, would prevent a city from doing something like that, or?
Thank you, Representative Brockway. Chairman Brockway, I guess.
No.
Okay.
Representative.
Anyway, well, I don't. My understanding that this bill is not so restrictive as to preclude like an ad hoc committee. In other words, if there's an issue that arises due to certain situations where you feel that you want to reach out to certain segments of your community on an ad hoc basis, there's nothing to preclude that.
Okay, so these sorts of things may come up with recommendations that the police force, for example, in this scenario would implement that wouldn't, in your mind, violate. It certainly doesn't violate the spirit of your bill, but you don't see anything in here that would prohibit something like that from happening.
No.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? What is the pleasure of the committee? Got a motion to pass? Do I hear a second? Second. All those in favor signify. Any discussion?
Just one clarification.
Representative Price.
Thank you. Just one clarification about, like you were saying, ad hoc committee or other advisory council, what have you. I'm a bit sensitive to this just because I'm an immigrant to this country, and when I came here, the only thing I thought I couldn't do was vote. I always thought I could do anything else, and consequently, I became very involved and never felt like I was a second-class citizen, except that I couldn't vote. That was the only thing I felt. So I'm a little sensitive, wondering, would my life have changed had I been prohibited from doing certain things, prior to becoming a citizen? I don't know. This is the first time I've seen it, so I just don't know. But I just want to make sure that maybe we clarify what you can do, or what's not included in this. Is an advisory council not included in this, or is an advisory council included in this?
I think the law stands on its own. The bill stands on its own.
Well,
We have a motion and a second.
Where does the advisory council fit? Okay.
Representative Fleming.
Mr. Chairman, and to the author of the bill, as far as discussion is concerned, this is more of, I guess, a discussion thought to get the chairman's opinion. What have we said on line 19, for example? That sentence begins with "no individual shall be appointed." What if before that it said, "except as an ex officio non-voting member, comma, no individual shall be appointed"? Of course, if the chairman thought that was a good idea, I'd be fine with it. If he didn't like it, I wouldn't want to offer it.
And I thank you for your consideration. I think from discussions that I've had, and we want to make sure the bill is correct, when there are good, able-bodied U.S. Georgian citizens, they should be the ones that make the determination when it comes to policy and it comes to matters about taxation. I think that was the intent of the bill. If someone disagrees with that and thinks that it should go to someone else who's not a U.S. citizen, was the discussion, or Georgia, then, you know, we understand if someone comes in because of military, that's reasonable. How we get there, leaving the intent, I'm open to suggestions. But to superficially call it ad hoc, to give someone the opportunity just to do it and undermine the very principle of being able to let Georgians serve on it, I think is problematic, because that's the intent of the author's bill. Does that help at all?
Is that a yes or a no, Mr. Chairman?
I'll tell you what we're going to do. Now, I get it. You want community to reach out, and I think that's legitimate, but I'm not going to have the bill watered down from the intent. If anybody wants to sit there and say, I'd rather have non-Georgian citizens on these, or U.S. citizens, then that's your position. That's great. But if you want to take a few minutes and actually work with the legislative council, I don't have a problem with that, coming up with the language, as long as we're not sitting there trying to lawyer it to death to water it and dilute it. I believe Georgians should come first. And I think that was the intent of the author.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And Representative Oliver, as far as the language, except as an ex officio non-voting member, comma, do you think the language affects a change?
I think the governmental unit on line 18 covers everybody, the advisory committee, whatever. I think that's I think this is overly broad and includes everybody that the city councilman wants to add to a welcoming committee. You don't have to have a budget, you don't have to have taxing authority. This is a bill that intends to exclude people who are legally in this country, who may be productive business partnerships or citizen partnerships. So I'm not interested in watering it down. I think that it's, in general, not an idea that is helpful to our business community.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think Ms. Oliver wanted to answer my question. May I ask it to Mr. Powell?
Yes, you may ask it to Mr. Powell.
If he thinks that on line 19, adding the language except as an ex officio non-voting member, comma?
Well, no. I think that based on what I'm hearing the author say, it's his intention that only citizens can serve on any of these governmental entities that deal with policy creation and deal with taxation. And so that is what I would focus on, is that you know, you have to be a citizen in order to be appointed to this kind of board that either establishes policy or establishes some kind of taxing. And then if you do that, then you don't have to define whether it's ad hoc, whether it's voting, whether it's advisory, or whatever it is, because you've covered what you want to do that way. That's the way I would approach it.
All right, the posture you're in is we have a motion due pass in a second. I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor of the due pass, signify on the substitute, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes clearly have it. Thank you. Representative Stovall.
$4.97.
House Bill 497.
Good afternoon, committee members.
Good afternoon.
I bring before you House Bill 497. And what this bill does is it allows for nonprofits in the state who have been in existence at least 2 years and which have no more than 15 full-time employees to be able to receive surplus property up to a $2,000 face value. Right now, currently in the state of Georgia, whenever any of our state departments or local government sees fit that they no longer need property, whether it's equipment or anything that falls in that range, then what they're required to do is they will take a picture of it, send that picture to the Department of Administrative Services, and after they receive that information, Department of Administrative Services place a fair market value for that particular property, and it's set up for auction. So right now, with the property, it can either be transferred to other agency, you can negotiate the sale, or public auction, or at the end it could actually be destroyed. So what we're talking about is used items that those departments no longer want to have, and so it's not anything new, and it's just one of the issues with being able to keep up with it. Right now, if you look at the brochure, nonprofits already have to go through an eligibility process right now, and so what this would do is just add on to the eligibility process the being in existence at least 2 years and no more than 15 full-time employees. For the and I think that it would help also eliminate the amount of product or equipment that is now being hosted or housed at our state departments across the state, and this also includes our university systems as well. And so there's no right now. There's no other way for the nonprofits to be able to receive the product unless equipment, unless they're actually bidding on it. And so this is kind of focused on our smaller nonprofits who are actually servicing our community across the state, and this will allow them to now be able to receive this equipment or property so that they can better serve our community.
Thank you, Representative Stovall. Questions from members of the committee? Representative Taylor.
Clarification. Would this also apply to confiscated property, like law enforcement agencies?
No, it's just
surplus equipment that has been purchased.
So yeah, it's already been purchased and approved by the state and whatever the budget they might have purchased. And so right now they no longer need it. So instead of them discarding it, they would now, like I said, they go through the process of making sure DOAS knows what the property is. So it doesn't have anything to do with confiscated property.
Thank you.
Representative Kidd.
Thank you. I think currently if the state has a house that somebody used to live in or a building and it's been vacant for X number of years, I'm not sure if it's 2 years or 5 years, then it's deemed to be surplus property if it hadn't been occupied. Is that correct?
Yes, if whatever their agency is the one that has to deem it to be surplus.
And so if a house has been vacated for 5 years and now it automatically deemed surplus because nobody's been in it for 5 years, then somebody like Habitat from Humanity could take possession of the house?
Only if it's a fair market value up to $2,000. So if it's above that, then they would not fall in the category. And then with Habitat, they would have to have 15 employees or less, no more than 15.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Members of the committee? Then the chair will entertain a motion. Got a motion, do pass, and a second. By substitute, any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, like sign. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Make sure you work with the Department of Administrative Services on this.
I will.
Thank you.
All right.
Chairman Powell, House Bill 765, the most controversial of the day, I'm sure.
You must be talking to another Powell.
You want to do it from there?
Yes, sir, if I could.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is House Bill 765. It came to my attention from my local county commission in Mitchell County. Last year, the year before, we amended the provision of statute dealing with the appointment of a local DFACS board so that there was a representation on that board with various professions that were familiar with families and children and the issues that DFACS deals with. And my local board of Commissioners tried to appoint a retired teacher, which they thought met the requirements, and found out that they could not, because the interpretation was this was only actively employed people, which, number one, cuts out a significant amount of our population that has the experience we're looking for, and cuts out people that actually have time to devote to these volunteer boards. And so they've requested that that I remedy that if that's the pleasure of the legislature. I thought it was a good idea.
And
So
obviously, based on your vote earlier, you prefer him to be a citizen of the. Yeah.
That will, if that bill passes, then that would certainly modify this,
Right.
but it still has to be.
Right.
According to this bill, a provider would be, or a person would be active or retired, so that would pick up people who were not actively in a profession such as teaching, but still had that degree of experience. And I think that was probably from the folks I've talked to that were involved in the original drafting of the bill, that was their intent anyway, and they had no idea that it would be interpreted to exclude retired persons. And so that's the bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Powell. Any questions of the chairman? You're recognized for that purpose.
Move to pass.
Got a motion to pass. Got a second. Any discussion? Great. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. House Bill 765 passes. And I think the last one we've got is Senate Bill 208, if I'm checking everything off correctly.
I'm not in that district.
Is that right?
Yeah, but this is
Representative D. Hagler Dawkins, Senate Bill 208.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the members of the committee, I bring for your consideration Senate Bill 20H, which is for the incorporation of a new city, the city of Stonecrest, in DeKalb County. We are very excited about this piece of legislation because it will provide for the people in DeKalb County, where I live, in 30038 and parts of 30058, self-determination and the ability to create something that we could be very proud of. The city would consist of 50,000 members, 50,000 constituents, and it would move, it would have three things that we would work with: parks and recreation, code enforcement, and planning and zoning. And so if you have any specific questions, I'm here to answer them for you now.
Just for my clarification, this was a bill that passed the Senate last year, and we had to make an amendment on the dates of the election, I think.
Correct.
Any questions of the author of the bill? Great. The chair will entertain a motion then. Oh, did you have anybody want to speak?
Yes, I want Mr. Jason Larry to say a few words.
You're this close to getting it. Boy. Wow. You might have wanted that vote.
Thank you. That's it.
Oh, that's beautiful. All right, we got a motion. Well, I'm sorry, you got a question, Representative Taylor?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Okay.
Population of 50,000. This is what we're terming city light again, is what I'm hearing. You're not going to have your own police department or public works or things like that?
As you know, that's not a term in code.
It's term in use, I should say.
Correct. We will not have those services, but it will be a city, yes.
Okay, and I guess my next question, if you're not going to provide your own police, one, how many police would you contract with DeKalb County? And two, how would you plan on paying for that going forward? Because it's a negotiated rate. It's not the same millage rate that you would have for police now.
So, as we speak today, one, we would not be considered city light.
Okay.
Our Constitution allows us to move forward with any services we decide to have at that particular end of it. So I wanted to kind of give a little bit of clarity on that. Second, we can negotiate that particular rate with the county as we move forward after those 3 services, for those 2 years. So we can handle that in effect with no issues.
Okay, through an IGA or something like that.
Correct.
Third question is I'm looking at the salaries here. Are you going to have a city manager, or is this basically? I'm looking at a $75,000 salary for a mayor. Most of the new cities, these are part-time positions. They're not strong mayor positions. The average salary is about $16,000 for mayor and about $10,000 to $12,000 for council. This just seems a little out of line with even larger cities like Sandy Springs or Johns Creek.
Well, there's a medium that you use with regards to how you compensate the folks that you want to work for you in that area. Our complement is different. What we're going to be doing is different. So we really need some good business people running for those particular offices. That's why the compensation is different.
Okay. To the sponsor, how many cityhood bills have you voted for?
It depends on which ones you're referring to.
Did you vote for Milton?
I wasn't here.
Did you vote for Johns Creek?
I can't recall.
Did you vote for Sandy Springs?
I wasn't here for any. No, I wasn't here.
Did you vote for Dunwoody?
I can't recall on that one. I may not have been
Did
here.
you vote for Brookhaven, La Vista Hills, Tucker?
No, I did not vote for La Vista Hills.
Okay. Why the epiphany now? I'm going to kind of ask you.
That's a good question. So the people at La Vista Hills, they inundated me with emails saying no. They called my house 24 hours a day. They were at the office all the time. They really lobbied so hard against that bill that they had me stressed out. I felt like it was they just inundated all of us saying no, 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 no. And then even when it was put on the ballot, they voted no. So I just felt like, I guess those citizens in that district really voted no. So the citizens of Stonecrest hopefully have not harassed any of y'all on this committee saying no, they don't want to have that city.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate the line of questioning. And let me, just from a chairman's perspective and hopefully a committee perspective, it's never been our position to say these cities is good, this is bad. We have a minimum standard. The other things shall be determined by the voters, one way or the other, and you try to get the message out. But it does cost some people, some other legislators, to sit there and go, well, you voted for this, but you won't vote for this, or you voted no all these other times, but now that it's yours, it's good enough. And so I appreciate the line of questioning because I kind of get the point. Do we have a position for the committee? Motion do pass. Do we have a second? By substitute, yes, thank you. Do pass in a second by substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. All right.
And just thank you. And just for we're getting really busy, as you know, and on the subcommittees, do your best so we can thoroughly vet the bills. We try not to take the testimony here unless there's a new position. So I look forward to seeing y'all, and we'll look out for your notices on your subcommittees, and we're adjourned.